I wanted to give you my perspective on belief and knowledge. First, the brain in a vat scenario and how we get past that. Obviously, we start with logic and reason, as that can be absolute and known internally in your mind. To get past that and accept the information that comes from our subjective perception of the natural world, we can use reason as well as testing predictions about what observations we expect in given situations. We can then begin building this model of the world based, at least in part, on sensory information of different types. This is an extremely fast, detail-skipping, not even quite Cliff Notes version of how we avoid solipsism by accepting knowledge gathered from outside the mind. We call this empiricism, which is what science is ultimately based on. So, moving on to knowledge and belief. There are many definitions, so let's try to broaden them to include all. We want to make it as general and basic as possible. So, belief is anything you think is true. Leaving it at that, we cover all definitions. Knowledge is anything you know, regardless of how you know it. So, we have covered all definitions of that too. Belief must come from some sort of knowledge. At a minimum, the knowledge of a particular concept the belief is regarding. What matters about knowledge is how we come to have it, or how we know. This is called epistemology. Keep in mind, we are not yet getting into whether the knowledge is accurate or the belief is actually true. To have a belief, you must first have knowledge. Once you have knowledge, you can either believe it or not. So you gain knowledge, think it is true, and then have belief. This, of course, being based on the most general, basic definitions. The next question is, how do we know things? One way to know things is logic or reason. So, logical proof or argument is a way to know something, or have knowledge. Another way to know things is empirical evidence, such as observations of the natural world or other scientific data. These first two things are frequently combined, too. Another way to know something is from your mind or a mind. This would be something your mind created independent of reason, such as fiction, for example. Finally, we have the communication of any of the three sources of knowledge I just mentioned. This can be communicated in any way, and there are many ways to communicate it. In order for an idea or concept to be known to you, in order to have any belief, it must have come either directly or indirectly via communication from one of the three ways to know something. So you know it from logic, empirical evidence, or a mind. You got it directly or it was communicated. You can then simply believe it is true or not true. You can also use reasoning, which may be logical or fallacious, to form other beliefs regarding this knowledge. To know if something is objectively true, we must determine if the knowledge comes from the two sources of objective truth. We must decide if the argument is logically valid and cogent. We must also verify the empirical evidence. If we can do this, we have a valid concept and can further evaluate beliefs about it. If we can't do this, then we are not able to have a belief in this. In this case, any beliefs regarding it are invalid because they are presupposed based on a concept for which there is no evidence. For example, you can know a scientific claim is true by verifying the evidence. You could then come up with further beliefs about it by using reason or by making predictions and testing them. An example of the other side of this would be gods. This concept can't be verified by a logical proof or empirical evidence, so we do not have a belief in it, or at least any such belief would be completely unfounded. We also know any such concept we have heard is almost certainly the product of the human mind, because that is the only other way to have knowledge of this concept. Any beliefs about this concept are invalid because they are presupposed based on this unproven concept. In this example, apologetics would be such beliefs, which are then used to prove their presupposed source, which is why they are all ultimately invalid. So, in this way we can know if any given piece of knowledge should become a belief or if it should not. In this way, knowledge in the most general sense can either become knowledge of the objective truth variety or not. If you don't judge these properly, you could end up with a belief of the faith variety. So, in other words, this would be the difference between thinking or running on automatic, so to speak. Accepting only beliefs with an epistemological basis, as I laid out, would be thinking, while forming a belief based on knowledge with no such basis would be running on automatic.